Well, the topic is about the future cities towards sustainable vertical urbanism. Well, when I'm going to talk about this topic, well, I think I would like to focus more on the architectural culture. Yeah, for China, yeah, over the past 2 decades of rapid growth, yeah, it is believed that in many cities, including some tier 3 cities, we have already seen many super tall buildings. Well, you know that yeah, in Chinese cities with only 500,000 people, 1 million people, yeah, these cities are still want to build these super tall buildings. Well, in the future, so I think China is still lack of the thinking about the architectural culture. You know that we have so many high rises. So actually it seems that yeah, we have seen a lot of stereotypes of those tall buildings. So actually while we are thinking about the architecture, I think the architecture should also be converged with the culture. Yeah, because in China we always say that so it means that a lot of Chinese people, yeah, they would like to live in an environment with mountains, with water, with a river, in a more natural environment. Then we can really feel that is the real life. But when we see these Chinese cities, actually we are lack of our natural environment. So in China, so actually, yeah, we haven't learn something good from New York, and we have learned the bad lessons from other cities. Actually, we are duplicating some bad experience. You know that during the commuting time, yeah, sometimes we take 1 or 2 hours, yeah, on the way to the office. I don't think that is sustainable or livable in the cities. When I'm talking about this topic, I'm thinking that, yeah, how can we really think about livability? Yeah, how can we really let people stay in the cities in order to feel a livable environment? Well, in terms of the legacy of the urban context, yeah, because currently, yeah, for this Bund project, yeah, I have already been living in the Bund area for more than 4 years. We'll take Shanghai Bund, for instance. Well, this is the gateway to Shanghai and also to China. It enjoys a very long history. And over the past 1 century, yeah, Bund is yeah, the Wall Street in Far East. And at the same time, yeah, 100 years ago, and the Bund is also the largest port in Far East. At the same time, yeah, Shanghai and also the Bund is also the birthplace of modern civilization. But now we have seen the loss of civilization in this place. In Bund, how do you feel right now over the past 4 years? Yeah, although I have already been living in Shanghai for more than 10 years, and among them 4 years are in Bund. I have also talked with some other people around me. Well, I told them that over the past 4 years in Bund, yeah, I'm feeling that, yeah, a lot of people feel proud of the architecture in the Bund, but I feel that's cold. Yeah, because we can only see very isolation of this architecture. We haven't seen the dynamics because the culture, the history, and also the sustainability into the future has not been demonstrated from the architecture in the Bund. Well, and for the entire Bund, of course, it enjoys a majestic civilization. How can we inherit? How can we really bring them into play in the future? So this is what I'm going to do. And from another perspective, and also especially for the super tall buildings for China's real estate history, so we can see that we have seen so many super tall buildings. However, so how about the connotation of those Chinese super tall buildings? A lot of Chinese developers focus on how to build a very bizarre and taller building. However, many Chinese developers ignore the connotation because you know that actually we need to have a livable environment. Well, you can see that from a cold city into a cold building. This is what I'm feeling now. And now we have seen a lot of bizarre shapes. But inside the buildings, actually, they are not practical. It is inconvenient for people. So I think this is a commonplace for a lot of developers. But of course, we have still see some good cases. But overall speaking, it seems that they are still paying less attention to the practical use. I think for China, in order to move towards a sustainable vertical society, we have to transform our mindset. So why we come up with a concept? While you're working in China, if you want to design an architecture, so I think we need to have a twofold perspective. First of all, we have to feel and experience inside the building. Second is the experience about the business model or business status in order to have better sustainability. First is the experience of building space. First of all, it should be livable environment, whether you are working inside it, whether you are living in that. We have to experience a livable environment, and also you can taste the flavor of culture inside the building. And next, the experience about the business status. Because I think a lot of sustainable vertical ideas should be infused in this building. For example, one-stop services. And then we can overcome a mega city disease. And I have talked a lot about the culture. I think this is more about how we can continue the legacy of our city. And these are some of our thoughts. Well, you know that in China, on a yearly basis, we can see that and Chinese people are expanding the urban landscape by 5 million square kilometers every year. Some of the figures are a little bit old, maybe not be accurate, but overall speaking, you can see that in Shanghai, in terms of the number of tall buildings, it is already the largest in the world. Actually, for Shanghai, it is home to a population of 20 million people. With so many super tall buildings, it may not be a bad thing because we have too many population. We need to have more super tall buildings to satisfy the needs of those population. But at the same time, we have also seen that what quality for each high building in Shanghai. This is what we need to rethink. According to our experience and understanding, whatever the building it is, we need to think about how we can inherit the history. We have to respect the urban context. We need to continue to innovate. So then in this way, we can really have a more sustainable building for the next centuries. While we are working on the project, our philosophy is that we can have the echo from the community in terms of the art and the life. We can get the echo from the community, from the developers, from the designers, and also from our investors, and also for all other partners. We need to have this echo among all the stakeholders. When I was here in the morning, and I have also seen the Schindler is also here. Schindler also has a booth. 2 months ago, I went to their plant in Schindler, and at their plant, they have also shown me a idea about the future development, the smart city. They have also showed how can we fulfill this mission. I think this is also very inspiring. Well, for a modern city, and we should also think about, in this fast-evolving world, how can we maintain our own characteristics? This is also what I'm thinking about. Because for a sustainable society, and also judging from the China's landscape, because I was always on business trip. When I was on business trip, when I open my eyes in the morning, I still think I'm still in Shanghai. When I was in Shenzhen and Guangzhou or in Beijing, when I wake up, when I open my eyes, when I see the city landscape from the hotel, I still think I'm in Shanghai because they look the same. Well, because in Shanghai, the problem is that actually they are the same for all the high rises. For those new rises, maybe you think it is good. In another city, they are just duplicating this high rise. So here, I would also like to call for our architects. While you are working with the developers and owners, you need to have your own independent ideas. I really respect the Norman Foster, our firm, our architect firm. This is not an advertisement because in the entire design firm, we have been talking with more than 20 bidders. Yeah, only our firm. Yeah, actually, they don't really echo us. Yeah, we have raised a lot of our demands, and we ask them to fulfill, but they always tell us no, no, no. But finally, they present us with their own ideas, and finally, we are very happy with their proposal. And in the audience, I have also seen some familiar faces from both home and abroad. Yeah, because I also study architecture. I was also an architect for 8 years, and then I started to work in the development industry. Here, I would like to call for our designers and architects that you should be unique in your own idea.
So from this perspective, when it comes to the history, heritage, and innovation, so how are we supposed to create and develop the sustainable city? So we really emphasize on the concept of urban context. We think that urban context is a culture and a spirit. So in the Bund, we already alluded to the financial history of the Bund and its modern culture. We also look at like the exotic clusters of architecture in the Bund. Currently, they're sort of a quote. They used to be full of a vigor and a vitality, but now they look sort of a quote. But the overall kind of a landscape just around the Bund is the combination of the past financial history. So according to the future government plan, really it hopes to revitalize the great glory of the Bund as it had in the past. So this is a very important point we count in our project. As far as urban context is concerned, we speak of like the vertical urbanism in high-rise buildings. So many people may be asking, what about the technical perspectives? How come you focus on a culture and urban context? Urban context is not the only kind of a characteristic of a architecture in a building, but it is the foundation and a root for a city. Only by physical buildings combined with people and supported and underpinned by the very cornerstone of an urban context could it really be an urban livable space. So this is why we really emphasize on the importance of urban context. Speaking of the Bund Finance Center, or BFC in short, as we know that BFC is a very important project to develop Shanghai into an international financial capital, and the BFC is a landmark building around the Bund area. So it is a part of the architectural landscape on the Bund. It is very close to the old Bund. For our international friends, just for your information, it is very close to the old Bund. Just on the Bund, there is this exotic cluster of architectures, and that is the core part of the Bund. And the BFC is very close to this kind of a core part of the Bund. It is just on the opposite to the Shiliupu Wharf. So it is a combination of the financial history and the shipping history of the past. So the Shanghai government really aims to build the Bund as a very important financial area in Shanghai, as the efforts are made to develop Shanghai into an international financial capital. So the very mission of a BFC is to carry the baton onward, just trying to make sure that the glorious past of the Bund can be carried on. This is a very mission and a positioning of the Bund area. So when it comes to our project, we focus on the fusion of a culture, heritage, and a real estate. So we treat it more like a piece of art. And we think it is a carrier to express culture and art. It is a vector to really carry on the baton. So we hope that while we try to create the space, we can incorporate architecture into the bloodline of the city. So as we know that the artists are created by spectators and the audience. So as we know that, the viewers are actually the ones who create art instead of artists. So what artists do is just to trigger the viewers' underlying emotions. So I think that the very purpose of architecture is to serve the needs of the people. Therefore, it must be a combination between this kind of architectural art with the urban cultural context. Only if you could do that could it become a landmark. So we are discussing with many scholars in the past, as a city, as a building, and as a sustainable and a smart kind of a city, full of vigor and vitality, it is a must that we combine the artistic, feel and a culture element into our building. And now we have different associations from different industrial sectors, and we have many colleagues who are trying to do some study and research on the real estate sector. But as their research unfolds, they seldom talk about the fusion of a culture into buildings. They pretty much approach it from the technical angle. Even for our architects, they seldom create buildings from the perspective of culture. We make this appeal that it is a must we combine the urban context and the cultural element with architectural design. So BFC, as we know, we really go back to the entire history of the Bund. So for the history of the Bund, back in the old times, a century ago, it was established. As we know, there were a lot of clubhouses, and there were many business associations upon its prime. This is like the very foundation of Oriental culture. In addition, it was only like the Wall Street of the East, HSBC really settled in the Bund. Then after that, we have an increasing number of financial institutions and banks that found their home in the Bund, and many regional headquarters of international banks and the private sector banks in China really settled down in the Bund. And furthermore, still for the Bund in Shanghai, and the Shiliupu Wharf was located just around the Bund area. It used to be the largest wharf and a port in the Far East. So now, the Bund still delivers some shipping service functions. And the Bund is also like a symbol for modern culture of Shanghai and one of the cradle places for China's modern culture. So earlier on, just around the Bund, there were many theaters and art platforms on which the vernacular Chinese shows were put up. Later on, we also introduced some overseas theater teams, like the Broadway teams, into the Bund to play. So Dr. Sun Yat-sen, used to come over to the Bund to enjoy those great artistic shows and a performance. So the Bund is a place that is like a platform on which the Oriental culture meets the Western culture. And therefore, there are like a business association and a clubhouse just around the Bund area, and we try to really combine the urban context with our building. And we have like 25, business association clubhouses, and then we built these vertical buildings inside which we have those clubhouse, which is a platform for businesses to meet with each other. Actually, this is the core part, one of the core areas of the Bund Financial Center. Therefore, we really try to build a network combining different elements like those different financial functions, both directly and indirectly. So those different functions serve the core of financial activities. As we know that we mentioned that there was a Shiliupu Wharf around the Bund area, so there are finance combined with the shipping, and we also incorporate like some shopping center into this area. And we also have a very good walkway for pedestrians. All these elements are well incorporated. In addition, still about art and culture, which I mentioned time and again. In foreign countries, you look at the properties in Manhattan, in New York, or Japan, there will be like the art gallery. But in China, you can seldom find such an art gallery in high buildings or landmark high-rise buildings. China, in the past, developers used not to be willing to locate a art gallery inside a landmark building because they think they couldn't make any money out of it. But for us, we really have a social responsibility. So in BFC, we have a art gallery with an area of close to 10,000 square meters, and we think that this is a great place to, where the Eastern culture meet the West. And with, kind of other projects, for example, with Manhattan, a gallery, we have a sisterhood partnership with our Manhattan peer. So, this is really great. Last year, we signed this sisterhood partnership contract with our Manhattan, gallery partner. And we try to extend the scope of our collaboration going forward. We really hope to revitalize the cultural vigor and vitality of the Bund as it already had in the past. We hope that every day there will be a great shows of art in the Bund. So those are the things we are doing. As a building, we think that the city is growing in a place where land resources are scarce. In terms of the urban fabrics, they are growing vertically. It should be like a kind of a music. There will be beautiful rhythm and melody. So we need to use, kind of art and culture as the pen to write the beautiful melody of the piece of music. So in combination of all those functions we spoke of, for me personally, actually, since 2005, in the domestic housing sector, in the real estate sector in China, I already mentioned, some of my ideas. We need to develop like the meeting room or the international rendezvous place in urban space. Please do not build those kind of futilist or useless architecture without value anymore. You're going to have to make sure your project will be like a meeting room in your apartment building, and it is a place for rendezvous. So although it is like a finance-oriented building, we still incorporate a lot of cultural vernaculars into this building. Why? Because we hope it's going to be an international rendezvous in the living room for people from around the world to gather and meet up. And it's also a carrier to really, sustain the great financial dream in the past century forward. So this is a skyline in the Bund area. I do not have too much time, so I'll skip a few slides. So for the old Bund, with a splendid history, the architectural fabrics and the symbols are also applied into our BFC project. So our practice really gives rise to the adoption of the old materials. You can look at the stone material with Norman Foster firm after rounds of negotiations, and we use artificial or man-made kind of a stone material. We use the tool to really process the stone material, make sure it can be a carrier of the historic cultural elements in the past. So these are many slides showing you some of our thoughts and ideas. And we also incorporate music into our building. In a retail space, it is like a, kind of a violin or a cello, and we can really incorporate some of the, kind of curves and beautiful rhythms into our building. This is an arts and a cultural center. And it is the Foster Thomas Headway that helped us to create the Arts and Cultural Center. And we refer to the traditional Chinese theater platform concept. And then we applied this kind of a fringe curtain, which is a symbol for Chinese ancient culture. So as you can see, these are traditional Chinese theater to put up a traditional show. And with this kind of a draped in a fringe curtain with the 3 stratum that are rotatable. So the 3 layers of the fringe curtain that are rotating continuously. So with Tongji University, we have a research project, and we translate the research findings into the project. The 3 layers of this kind of a curtain are continuously rotating, so it looks like a dynamically flowing building. So this building per se, in the Bund, is a piece of art. You can look at the spatial construct. So for this project, we really approach it from the angle of sustainability. We need to create the vitality and creativity for this building so that we can finally pull it off, developing an international rendezvous. Thank you.